Welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and happy to be with you live here on Facebook. Proud member of the Education Podcast Network, Voice Ed Radio Canada, wherever you are taking your podcasts in. Thank you so much for tuning in. And super excited today. Andy Andrews is coming to us live from Orange Beach, Alabama, from the Wisdom Harbor Studios himself there. We are going to be meeting Andy Andrews from the Wisdom Harbor Studios. And if you haven't heard Andy Andrews, if you don't know the name right now, real quick, just Google him. I mean, the guy is arguably one of the best speakers I have ever seen. These are just a few of the books he has sent me. Personalized, autographed, persisting. I've got a few more on Audible, but I have proud to say, Andy, I fell in love with your stories. I fell in love with you and the things you had to say, the message you had to bring about being your best self, and so many things. So we are going to get to that ASAP. A quick word from today's sponsor, IXL.
I'd like to thank IXL for sponsoring today's podcast. Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classroom every day. IXL is the most widely used online learning and teaching platform K through 12. It empowers schools with complete curriculum, thousands of instructional resources, robust reporting, assessment data, and more. It saves teachers a lot of valuable time with ready-made plans aligned to the standards and the textbooks. Built-in engagement tools like custom competitions make learning fun for students. And IXL's diagnostic is research proven to be a strong predictor of performance on standardized assessments. And the best part, everything I just mentioned is all integrated into one platform, so you can simplify your EdTech tools. Visit IXL.com to lead your students towards data-driven excellence today. The link is in the show notes. And again, appreciate IXL sponsoring today's podcast.
All right, let's get to it. We're going to meet Andy in a moment. I had the great opportunity to speak alongside Andy at St. Simon's Island. Shout out to MG Risa, Okani Risa, and the North Georgia Risa there. And tremendous event, tremendous place. And I had so many takeaways, but two of them just slapped me in the face, Andy. Just bam, just slapped me right in the face. Number one, all the ideas aren't taken. Right? He said it so simply, and you hear that like, yeah, you know what? All the ideas aren't taken. And it just, I don't know, just opened my mind to so many things and things I've been thinking about, things I've been wanting to do. And I said, Andy, you know, you're right. And I started looking at things differently there after hearing it. And number two, smile while you talk. A lot of times as a referee, I might have been frustrated by something. As a principal, I might have been not happy about something. And what does that look like when you communicate? It's easy to smile when you talk, when you're happy and you're at a birthday party, you know, it's easy. But it's not easy all the time when you're in different events. And he said, like, practice it in the mirror. And when you do, it's true what he said. You're giving off a positive vibe. You're giving off good communications. Those were just two of the many lessons and things I took away from Andy's talk. All the ideas aren't taken, and smile while you talk. But enough of this Andrew talking. Let's bring in the other Andrew, the other Andy from Orange Beach, Alabama. Andy, welcome.
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
Oh man, excited to be with you. I gotta get back to my reading as soon as the podcast is over. What's going on?
Oh, we're just dealing with the heat down here. I understand you had it really cold the other day.
Cold and rainy in June. I mean, I'm ready. Let's switch places quickly.
Yeah, well, you'll be hot soon enough.
Yeah. Like tomorrow, it's gonna be 90. But Andy, thank you. I know you're a busy person. You have your own show, the Professional Noticer, the writing, the speaking. It's a great thing you got going on there. Andy, let's start. I heard your story. I read your story, but you lost your parents. You lost your parents young, and what a tragedy there. But how did things go sideways for you? How did you wind up under the pier?
Well, my mom died of cancer. My dad was killed in a car accident, and I was 19 years old and kind of unprepared, as you can imagine, for something like that. And so I ended up, I've always had the ability to take a bad situation and make it worse, and I did. Uh, just made some bad moves and ended up literally living under a pier and in and out of people's garages, which is not safe or smart, but I did. And so this was in the mid 80s, early mid 80s, and this is what my life had become. And it was, I had $2,500 in insurance money from my parents, and
Wow.
being the financial genius I was, I took it all and spent it all on a trailer. It never even occurred to me I'd have to pay somebody to move it or pay somebody to put it somewhere. So I was behind the eight ball right off the bat.
And then you're there, and then Jones comes into your life. I wasn't a reader either, Andy. I was not a reader, but I didn't have a Jones come into my life. Jones comes in and urges you to read, as you called them, adventure stories.
Yeah. I mean, they were biographies, and he gave me 3 to begin with. This was the old man that I met when I was under the pier, and he called himself a noticer. He said, when God was passing out talents, I didn't get the cool ones. I can't run fast. I can't sing great. I just noticed little things that make a big difference in people's lives. And so he gave me 3 books, gave me Winston Churchill, George Washington Carver, and Will Rogers. And I remember saying, biographies? He said, no, these are adventure stories. They're mysteries and romances and thrillers, and they're true. And that really kind of had a different context to me. So I started reading them and got hooked on these biographies, on these adventure stories of real people.
Wow. And Andy, there's a lot of people that read books and feel inspiration. There's a lot of people that meet great people like you, but they don't take action. What were some of those action points? What did you do to literally dig yourself out of there? Number 1, get back on your feet, but then number 2, turn it into motivation, inspiration, the work you're doing all around the country, around the world.
Yeah. Well, I noticed these. There were 7 things. After reading about 200 biographies, I began to kind of graph it in my mind, and I had noticed 7 things that all these people had or were, and so those are the 7 things. I called them things. At first, I didn't know what they were. I knew they weren't 7 habits. They weren't 7 ideas. I finally determined there were 7 principles, which principles work every time, whether you know them or not, they work. And so I began to fold these principles into my life to start yanking myself out of that situation.
Yeah. Putting things into practice, and then you put them in a book. So, Fred, it's summertime. It's coming. If you haven't read this, it's on Audible. It's also hard copy. And if you buy it from Andy down in, he's going to sign it and send it to you. But they're in here. Those 7 principles are in here. And Andy, I've read a lot of books. You masterfully weave them together with characters, fiction and nonfiction, to become an incredible journey. When did David Ponder arrive in your mind? Where did David come from?
I was working as a comedian with Kenny Rogers, and I was on a bus with him late one night, and we were talking about him growing up in Houston in a garage with 150 brothers and sisters or whatever it was. And I was telling him about living under a pier and about these 7 things I had found. And he said, well, you need to start talking about them. And I was like, well, they're not funny. And he said, that's okay. He said, they're interesting. And so, you need to start talking about them. I said, so just be funny and then not be funny? He said, yeah, and then be funny again. He said, you're a talker, just transition. So I did that. And I started doing it in his shows. And so people started coming to me and asking about those shows. So that was the beginning of the idea of having the traveler's gift as a story.
Yeah.
And the traveler's gift is a story about a man, David Ponder, going through a tough time in his life, and the he gets to travel through time, meeting with 7 historical figures who are also going through a tough time in their own life. And so each of them gives him a different decision, a different principle that if he puts it in his life, things will change. And so that was the story of the traveler's gift. And that's the genesis of that book.
There it is, friends. Highly, highly recommend. It really, Andy, it's transformative. When you say Kenny Rogers, like Kenny Rogers, like the gambler, Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, yeah. I worked as a comedian for a number of years. I worked for 2 years with Joan Rivers, for 5 with Kenny, and with
Wow.
Garth Brooks and Randy Travis and a lot of people.
So you would do comedy before the musical shows?
Yeah, I was their opening act.
How about that? That's pretty good. And then you got to stay for the shows, obviously.
Yeah, but after you've seen one,
You've
you're
seen them all.
you generally back on the bus or back at the hotel.
How about that? That's pretty cool, Andy. And where did Polly enter your life? Your beautiful wife, the supporter of the family there. Where did Polly come in on this journey?
I was doing a lot of college concerts, and so I got brought in to speak at Mississippi University for Women. And I remember pulling up and seeing that big stone MUW on the campus lawn and thinking, mean, ugly women. That's what this is going to be. And then I met her there, and that was the beginning. And that was 38 years ago that we met.
Wow. So she must have thought you were funny.
She thought I was funny, but she didn't really care otherwise. So, I couldn't even get her to give me her phone number the first night. So I had to kind of harass her a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure it was in that Southern charm way you got. But Andy, then, after the success of The Traveler's Gift, which is a nonfiction, but it's fiction, it's kind of both, but this is almost like a true story, right? I mean, Jones was the character you met under the bridge, right?
Well, the Noticer, the first chapter of the Noticer is true.
Yeah.
And so the rest of it's a little more my imagination, but the first chapter is true. And The Traveler's Gift was the first book in American publishing history that was on the New York Times list in fiction and in nonfiction.
Yeah. I mean, and just like you said, comedy, serious comedy, you're weaving these back and forth of what's true, what's not true. And it's just a great story.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of educators, Andy, that watch this show. I work with educators. You and I were at an educational conference, and they want to write books. You did it in a way that it was really unique and special, and kudos to you, with a pinch of humor.
Thank you.
Like most things you're doing. Yeah, well, and I just finished the third one, Andy. And again, how you took a single moment, you and your friends in the pool, and your buddy does something in a silly contest that kids have done 1,000,000 times, but you turned it into such a thought-provoking thing. Tell me about noticing that incident.
Well,
how it impacted your thinking.
The book you're referring to is The Bottom of the Pool. And the game we played when we were 11 years old was we got tired of Marco Polo and began to make up our own games. And one of the games we made up, we called Dolphin. And that was when Flipper was on TV, and we'd circle up in the deep end and go to the middle one at a time. And you'd try to see how high you could get up out of the water. Like Flipper would get up on his tail, and we'd see how high you get. And there was one guy older than us, bigger than us, and he would always win. But then there was one day when my best friend, Kevin Perkins, got to the middle, and he went down instead of up. And we're treading water and looking down at him, and what is he doing? He goes all the way to the bottom squats way down, then pushes against that concrete and comes way out of the water, way higher than the older guy had ever done. And so we were just like blown away that doing it opposite of the normal way. I mean, you know, this guy who was winning, his name was Aaron Perry, and Aaron was the gold standard. You know, he was forget that dolphin was only being played in one place in America. He was the best dolphin player in the world. And so we would watch him and we would try to figure out what he was doing and how he was doing it. And we could never, you know, every time we would get a little better, he'd get a little better. And so it was amazing to think back on that and realize that we knew how to do it. It was simple. It was a simple thing. You could just watch and see how to do it. And that was the way it was done until one of our kids went down instead of up. And then what had been so obvious was no longer even true. And so it has such a bearing. That story has a bearing enough for a book, I guess, but it has a bearing on so many things that we consider the way things are done or the industry standard or best practices. And that will bring you to a certain level. But the people who get ahead, the people who get far ahead, the schools that get far ahead, the organizations that get far ahead, they're doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Andy, when did you know? You're 11 years old. You're in a pool in Alabama. Like, you turn this into a concept. You talk about a paradigm shift. You talk about a slap in the face. Was that story just stuck in your mind all these years? When did you say, "Hey, I'm going to use this into my coaching. I'm going to use this in my leadership coaching with some of the most elite companies and leaders out there"? That incident from an 11-year-old playing in the pool.
Yeah, I had been telling that story, and you know, but I was into my 40s before I thought, you know, this has bearing on a book. And so we called the book The Bottom of the Pool, Thinking Past Your Boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. It helps anybody in business or in education. It helps them think beyond that status quo.
It was a Dolphin world record.
Yeah.
Still stands today.
Best player in the world.
Andy, man, and the other thing, Andy, I got to say, you know, you speak out a lot of places. I speak out a lot of places. I always want to go see the keynote speaker, whether I'm keynoting or not. I want to go see that. I want to learn. I want to get better. But you've been around the block a few times, and there you were. You came back the next day. Do you do that all the time? Do you do it to try to teach or help the person? Do you do it to learn something? Why do you do that? You've been doing it so long.
Well, you know, I was fascinated when you and I had met and talked for a few minutes the day before. And so, you know, I had the day there. And so I thought, I'm going to go see this guy. And I really, man, I was a big fan immediately of what you were doing and how you were doing it, how you were communicating with the audience and the things that you were teaching. And so I don't do it all the time because most times if I'm speaking somewhere, I'm flying out that afternoon. Mm-hmm. And so, but this time I had the day and it all lined up that I got to see you.
Well, for the little fish, you know, for the big fish to come see, I was honored. I was impressed. And then certainly your interaction, you threw a curveball at me about the question and I want names. It was great, but it really meant a lot that you did that, Andy. But it goes back to the stories. I think that you identified, again, me using stories as it. Is this a learned skill, Andy? Is it something that you learn, or do you have to be, you know, this person that had this amazing life of all these twists and turns to become a master storyteller? Tell me about the
I think everybody has stories. I think everybody has stories. I think every life has a book in it, and it's just a matter of learning how to tell it, and learning which parts to accentuate, which parts to skip. But I think every life has a story. I think every life has a book in them. And it's a matter of dialing in and concentrating and figuring out what has value for other people, what will help other people.
Obvious greater value.
Right. Obvious greater value.
And that humor and the way you deliver it. Do you still watch comedy, Andy? Are you still into the comedy, or is it more now leadership and coaching?
You know, I watch comedians now. When I was working as a comedian, I didn't watch them.
Yeah.
But now I do. I watch now, but I didn't then, because it would always kind of, if they didn't do well, it made me nervous. And if they did well, I would wish I'd have thought of what they were talking about. And
Yeah.
so but now that I'm not working as a comedian, I watch them all the time.
Yeah. And the smiling while you talk helps you. It certainly helps.
Oh, yeah. That's something I learned with comedy. I never thought I was the funniest person out there, but I could connect with an audience.
Yeah. I joked, I had 100 slides when I spoke on my screen. You had one, and your presentation was double as long as mine.
Well, they make the smart authors. They make the smart authors use slides.
Well, Andy, in addition to the work you're doing, the inspiration work, the book writing, you also coach companies. You coach leaders, elite leaders. So these people are already successful. How do you come in there and offer advice, offer tips, and coach someone who's already at a high level? How do you do that?
Well, the people that are, or the companies that are at a high level, we have a company called Creating Measurable Results, and we teach entire organizations, entire companies, entire systems. And every 2 weeks, we have a message that coaches everybody in the system, everybody, not just the leadership, everybody. And so the companies that are doing well, the companies and the individuals who are in first or second place, they're generally easier to coach because they understand what it takes to get somewhere. They understand the thinking, that it takes to get to a certain place. People that are stuck in mediocrity, or people that are close to failing, we can work with them, but it's not as fun, and it can be a struggle because there's a lot of pushback sometimes. Because what we do is fun. It's not boring. It's exciting, but it requires you to think. And so we're helping people think to new levels, and it's organic. It works within their system, but it is something that spreads out over time into a much better thing.
Yeah, and the ideas, the every 2 weeks, reaching every employee. How do you deal with when you get well, this is the way we've been doing it, or I'm not good at that. How do you deal with maybe some feedback, some kickback?
We have all that settled out before we agree to coach them.
Okay.
Because it's, when somebody comes out with, well, this is the way we've done it. Look, you reached out to us, right? And why did you reach out to us? Because you're evidently not real happy with, or you're not totally satisfied with where you are. And so if you're not totally satisfied with where you are, that means the way you have always done it is not working like you want it to work.
Yeah. Good point. Andy, we're ending the school years down south. They pretty much have closed down. Up north, we have a few more weeks. But this is a chance for educators and principals, leaders, we kind of catch our breath. And you as a motivator, you as a speaker, you're capturing those downloads. You're capturing those ideas. What would you say to educators now that finally get to catch their breath? How might they capture their own idea? How might they capture that thing that they want to do and then put in for next year, put in for August and September? How do you capture the downloads and put them into action?
the main way is to remember that you don't want to use your downtime to catch up. You want to use your downtime to get ahead.
Mm.
And because if you start next year's school year ahead, it's a whole different deal. It's a more comfortable year. It's a more exciting year. There's less panicked thinking, and excellent leaders, which if you're a teacher, you need to be an excellent leader. And you need to understand that. And there are different styles of leader. You haven't got to be this gung-ho, climb a mountain with me now kind of guy or girl to be a leader. But you do have to think beyond the people you're supposed to be leading.
Yeah. You talk a lot about that again in the book here about differently going beyond, to get to a level that you don't even know is there, thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with Coach Saban. The first time I ever had a conversation with him, he was like 60 something years old and had won national championship. And so I told him, I said, where you've come from here and you've gotten to here, and you can look at your life and your career, what it took to get from here to here. And I would imagine that you can look at the time you figure you have left in your career and what you've done from here to here. And maybe you imagine you can go from here to here, but I bet you anything you're not imagining going from here to here.
Mm.
And so to be able to imagine that, to be able to think that way, and this is another thing about being in rare air. I told him, I said, you're in the conversation for the best of all time. And so what seminar do you go to? What consultant can you possibly bring in who knows more than you know? But me, I don't really know anything about football. I mean, I know what a fan knows. I'm a fan, but I don't have any idea what you know. So I help people compete in ways the competition doesn't know a game is going on. So that means I'm going to help you think in ways that you would not normally think and in areas that you would not normally traverse. And so this is what we do with everybody we work with.
Yeah. And you spoke about that in Georgia, about the whistle to whistle, from the play starting to the play ending.
Yeah.
And then from the play ending to
yeah.
the
Everybody competes in football from the snap to the whistle.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody competes. But if you can, and you got to be good from the snap to the whistle. You have to be. I mean, and in our everyday life, that's a metaphor for our business, for our organization, for what we do for a living. You got to be good from the snap to the whistle, because if you're not good from the snap to the whistle, you don't even get to play. But if you want to really compete in a way that the competition doesn't know a game is going on, then not only do you need to legitimately compete from the snap to the whistle, but you got to figure out how to compete from the whistle to the next snap while everybody else is just standing around. Then you're going to run them off the field.
Mental strength, mental preparation, like you just said, thinking ahead, all of those things. And wow, Andy, this is great stuff. You're speaking, you're writing, you're coaching elite teams, athletic teams, companies. Which one do you like the best, Andy? Do they all flow a little differently? Do you enjoy a quiet Sunday morning writing session or speaking to a 5,000 seat group? Which one do you like better?
I would almost rather do anything than write. So I mean, I would almost rather do anything. People say, "Oh, you must love to write." No, I don't. I don't love to write. I love having written. I like being through with it. I like being an author. I like making my living that way. I like signing books for people. I like giving books to people. Sure. But do I like to write? No. Every time I sit down in front of the computer, there's only 50 things I can think of I'd rather be doing.
Do you block those things out? Do you do a chunk? What's your strategy to write?
Well, editors and publishers threatening my life works. I mean, they'll start threatening me with these deadlines and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I'm a words of affirmation person, and I tell them, I said, just tell me you like it. Just tell me it's great. Because if you tell me that, man, I'll be writing like crazy. But if you threaten me, nothing.
Well, they're pretty good. There's a lot of them. I'm looking forward to continuing on here. This one, again, another one here, phenomenal. Well, Andy, they're entertaining, they're motivating, and certainly, pushing you to take action. But I want to go back to that point, Andy. I took the ACEs test. I don't know if you ever heard of that, adverse childhood experiences.
No.
That's something they do with educators. Adverse childhood experiences, things that happen to you that set you back. And the higher the number, the more things you had to set you back, right? The chance of you being successful. ACEs is what they call it. It's an educational thing they do with students, staff. They do it with companies. And the higher the number, the less chance you have to be successful because you had a lot of bad things. You had alcoholism in your family. Your parents died. I took the test, Andy, and I had a 0, meaning nothing. Nothing was in my way of being successful. And I'm hoping I'm reaching up to that. But if you took that with your parents dying and maybe some bad choices, you're 19, you have no guidance. You have some high ACEs. Again, how did you change your habits to become successful? You're under a peer. How did you read some books?
Yeah.
There had to be some habit-breaking things that you did to propel you forward.
Well, the books, thankfully, I read those books looking for something.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a highlighter under the pier, but I might as well have, because I was looking for something. I was desperate for answers. And so, if you walk around out in the field and you see a colored egg, you may pick it up, you may not, you may never go back. But if you go to a field knowing that there are eggs hidden around everywhere and there's some golden ones and you can keep whatever you find, well, now that's a different search. And so that's the way I was reading these books. I was looking for answers. And so gratefully, I really happened on the principled idea of figuring things out that worked every time. Principles work every time. They work whether you know them or not. The principle of gravity was working long before the apple ever fell on Newton's head. But once it did, and once he understood it, we as a society were free to harness that principle to create airline flight and suspension bridges and any number of things the principle of gravity holds sway over. And so the same is true of principles floating around in our lives and our culture today. If these principles change things for people when they harness them, why wouldn't we learn them and harness them to create the future of our choosing?
Yeah, I like that word harness there. And I love the comparison of the eggs. Here's one for you, Andy. If you carry a bird cage around long enough, someone's going to give you a bird, right? Those eggs are out there. Those things are there for the taking. But you did it, and you did it in a dramatic way. And I'm lucky to have crossed paths. If you're looking for a speaker, you're looking for a great book to read, check out Andy's stuff. And Andy, the Wisdom Harbor, what a cool thing you've developed there, where curious people find curious things. Tell me about the Wisdom Harbor and that website and the work you're doing there.
Yeah, wisdomharbor.com was created especially for schools, but it's also for parents. And our stated goal is to create America's next greatest generation by creating conversations between adults and young people. So many adults tell me today they don't have conversations with their children, or grandparents don't have conversation with their grandchildren beyond how's school going, how's baseball going. Other than that, there's not much to talk about. And so when you and I were growing up, Andrew, there were things on television that we enjoyed watching with our parents, and our parents enjoyed watching with us. But but today there's not much anybody enjoys watching together. And so we created this site, wisdomharbor.com. It's a streaming service, $27 a year for the whole thing. And it has a bunch of different docs. Bet you didn't know docs. How do I docs, musicians docs, writers docs, all different, what do you call it? Different subjects. And, there's even for teachers on there, there's a thing that divides it up into their subjects, like, with science and history and English and literature and music and culinary and on and on. And so teachers are using these in their classroom, these 6 and 7 minute video presentations, and the kids are just fascinated by them. And it gives them some, a conversational topic, and the parents can play it before dinner and have something to talk about the entire dinner time. Mm-hmm. And so then it connects the parents and the teachers, the school, the home. We have in towns, police stations and fire stations and radio stations and cafes also becoming involved and also watching that. And then they've got conversational topics with these kids. So it's a thing that's working, and it's fascinating. It's inexpensive. Wisdomharbor.com.
It's kind of like you're creating noticers, right? You're creating these people to notice things and maybe start talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. Wisdomharbor.com. Check it out, friends. Andy, this is fantastic. How do you sharpen your saw? Again, you've been doing it a while. You've spoken hundreds of thousands of times. You've written a bunch of books. How do you continue to get better?
Quiet time for me is a premium. And so to gather that time where I can be quiet and just talk to God and, just be alone and think. And then I read a lot. So.
Yeah. Is that the place where you're sitting right there? Kenny Chesney calls it the old blue chair. That's one of his songs. Is that your place that you're sitting in right now? Or are you walking on Orange Beach? Is that
behind me is where this room back here is the room that I usually have quiet time in. Yeah. But also at my house and out on the dock, and just, I just find the places when I can.
And you capture those downloads. John Gordon calls them capture the downloads. Do you know that they're going to be good? You said to your publishers, hey, tell me that it's good. But you had this idea of you playing a game with your buddies that turned into a massive idea that people can relate to. Did you know it was good when you got it? How did you know it was good enough?
When I figured out its relevance, I knew it was good.
Yeah.
I mean, until I figured out its context and its relevance, it was just a fun story about what we did growing up. But once I connected that to the way we think, then it was a whole different ballgame.
You're a storyteller, Andy. And this generation of music, you can relate. I went to the Neil Diamond show. My parents grew up listening to Neil Diamond. Did you see the show on Broadway, or did it come through there? Have you seen the Neil Diamond show?
No. And did it come through here? I live in a town with 5,000 people. Nothing comes through here.
I don't know if it was coming through Birmingham or something. It's called A Beautiful Noise. But talk about the people pressuring you to write. Neil wanted to get out of a contract. He signed this deal. He wasn't happy. He wanted to get out of the contract with them. And they said, well, you got to produce, this hit, So he's in a hotel room. He's got to produce this hit. And he's there for like 2 weeks, and he's pulling his hair out, and he's sitting there, and he sees this magazine, and Caroline Kennedy is on the cover, and he's sitting there thinking, and he writes "Sweet Caroline." And
that's a song that you can probably go up to anybody in America and go, dun, 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 and everybody goes, "Sweet Caroline."
Yeah. But the story came from under pressure. The story came from having to write, which then freed him to write more, which was pretty unique.
I write much better under pressure, because you know what I do? You know what I do when there's not any pressure? I don't write. because
So what's next?
because
What's your
I'd
next
read
project?
because I'm not crazy about writing,
Yeah.
and so if I'm not making myself do it, because writing is a discipline. People say, I want to write a book. And I'm like, really? When are you going to do it? Well, I've been thinking about it. When I get inspired to write, I'm just waiting to get inspired. And I'm like, I'm inspired one time with every book. And that's when I have the idea and figure out, yes, that'll work. Then I'm inspired. The rest of it is work.
What's next for you? What's your next project?
I'm working on a parenting thing right now. I'm working on a mentoring book. Always working on Wisdom Harbor, always working on creating measurableresults.com. And so, always working on something. I'm keeping Matt busy or Matt's keeping me busy, one or the other.
You got a great team there. Your assistant, SB. Your stuff looks great. It's fantastic. To get to the point where you're selling a book every minute here. Check that out, friends. Incredible. Well, Andy, I really appreciate the time. Anything else you want to share before we get
No,
moving?
man, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. Having watched you at St. Simon's Island, I'm aware of where you are working and where you are going emotionally and mentally, and just to encourage you, because you are on the track. I think people really need to bring you in, because it's a valuable process that you have that you can lay out for people.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm coming to Orange Beach. I can't wait to visit you in Alabama.
Yeah.
Spend some time, and I'm looking forward to coming to the studios there. I get to see the chair.
Yeah, man.
All right, Andy. I know you're in the South. Things move a little slower, but these are rapid fire. Okay. These
Okay.
are rapid fire questions. This is traffic in Boston at one of your speaking gigs. Are you ready?
Yes.
Last movie you saw.
By the way, you say this is rapid fire. It's like traffic in Boston. I've never been anywhere slower in my life than traffic in Boston. All right, but go ahead.
Last movie you saw.
The Fountain of Youth.
Do you stop movies when you see something that you want to capture and write about?
No.
Yeah, that drives my family nuts. Last concert you went to?
Last concert. Man, I'm trying to think. I don't go to many concerts. The last concert I went to was probably my son, Austin Gray.
Oh,
You look up Austin Gray music and you see him, but he's a songwriter, singer, probably him or maybe the Isaacs or Jimmy Yeary.
Are you a big country music fan from playing at all those shows?
I'm not a huge country music fan. I am a fan, and for years there, I knew all of them. I don't really know any of the younger ones, but I still know the ones that are still alive.
Yeah.
I was at a thing the other night and took a picture with Kix Brooks, Lee Greenwood, John Rich, and T.G. Shepard, and William Lee Golden. And it's like, I'm the only one here who doesn't sing.
I saw that picture. Your favorite dish, Andy?
Chicken and dumplings.
Okay. You travel a lot. You got to spend some time St. Simon. What's your favorite vacation activity?
Fishing.
You're a fisherman.
Yeah. And I love being in quiet places. I love fishing with my boys.
Beautiful.
They're young men now, but always be boys to me.
In 2025, I have fill in the blank.
In 2025, I have a stopped up nose. I don't know. What? In 2025, I have big plans.
Keep on writing. In 2025, I have stopped.
In 2025, I have stopped eating so much.
I started counting calories for the first time in my life.
I can't count calories. I just don't eat. And everybody says, yeah, you shouldn't skip a meal. And I'm like, it's easier for me to skip a meal than to sit down and eat 5 bites.
2,100 calories. Here's one for you. Changed my life. Rice cakes. I put the things on rice cakes, and the crunch helps me.
Oh, yeah. I hear you.
Give it a shot. You are a superhero. So what is your superpower? If you had a superpower, what is that?
Invisibility.
A lot of people say that on here when I ask them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I'm surprised, but I've always thought, man, I would love that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're not invisible because you're making a positive impact wherever it is you go. What's a pet peeve of yours? You've shared a lot of your passions. What's a pet peeve of yours?
People that are unaware that there's anybody else in the universe. That drives me nuts. People that will go to the top of an escalator and then just stop and look around, or people that are standing right out from an elevator and, the door's open and they're trying to get in. It's like, we have to get out before you get in. It's these things that people just, you see people that look like they must think they're the only person on the planet.
The opposite of a professional noticer.
Right. That bugs me.
What's your biggest speaking goof? The thing you screwed up the most while publicly speaking?
Probably. Well, it was something I didn't have in my control, but I spoke to an audience one time that didn't speak English. And I was like, that was ridiculous. So
would they have it shooting up behind you in different language?
No, it was I was opening for Kenny, and it was on a tour, and we were touring Canada. We were in Quebec, and I was going to be on every date except that French-speaking audience. And they had a French-speaking comedian coming in, but he didn't show up. They said, you have to do it. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I said, this is going to be horrible. And Kenny laughed and he said, yeah, I know it is. And it was 25 minutes of silence.
At 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, Andy Andrews is fill in the blank.
Enjoying quiet time.
Do you do the morning fishing? Are you going out early fishing?
I do. I do fish early sometimes, but I, most 8 a.m. Saturday mornings, I'm the first to get up, and I've gotten up earlier than that. And so just being quiet.
Orange Beach is fill in the blank.
Too crowded.
It wasn't always like that when you were growing up.
No, and I understand. We're a resort town, and so 5,000 full-time residents with a tax base for 300,000 visitors.
Wow.
So on 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, we tend to go to the grocery store on Thursday, and we don't come out of our neighborhood until Monday.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to visiting. Friends, this is Andy Andrews. Leave him a positive comment in here. Andy, it's been great to have you on. How about a quote, Andy? Something to end the show with.
All right. This is my favorite. You can't believe everything you think.
Period.
Did
you say that? Is that an Andy Andrews quote?
Yeah, that's me. I put it in Joan's mouth, but that was me. Yeah. You can't believe everything you think.
Well, you think a lot. You find that time to think, and you've done an exceptional job of capturing those ideas and putting them into action for other people. Friends, I recommend Andy's books. I recommend Andy as a speaker, and certainly the wisdomharbor.com. Andy, a round of applause for you, and thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Honored to spend time with you.
Yeah, to your crew there, your team, they got you in line, man. They're keeping you under wraps.
They do.
The harness. All right, we are going to sign off on the podcast. Andy, stay on the line a second. But friends, again, check him out. It's summertime. Dive into one of those books. It's an easy read, right, Andy? I'm sure you've heard that the books are
They are easy to read. I am
hard to write, easy to read.
Yeah.
Tell your publishers that to get off your back. All right, we're going to sign off here. Check out Andy. His links are in the show notes. And thanks for tuning in, friends. Keep surviving and thriving.